I recognize Mr. Cramer, North Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Ashe, for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Frankly, I don't find these investigations for truth to be, quote, mindless as depicted by the ranking member. Frankly, I find quite offensive the terminology that we, quote, dragged a woman in here last year, unquote. This has become the language of the angry left. And if you want comparisons, I find the ranking member's behavior today to be very similar to that of the majority leader of the United States Senate lately. I want to get to the bottom of this line of questioning, and we just heard the chairman's clarification. I'd be interested in your clarification. Were there extra documents requested that were not previously requested? In other words, does the subpoena include documents that were not part of the original redacted information that was provided?
From my standpoint, Congressman, it certainly does. I mean, we were not asked for case files in the previous document request. The subpoena requests all of our law enforcement case files going back to 2009. Those are hundreds of files. And so, and to be responsive to the committee, we have to take all of those files and break them into separate documents. It's an extraordinarily time-consuming effort. I wish we had the capability to just push a button and produce all this stuff, but people have to go through it and they have to put it in the right format. It's an
Sure.
extraordinarily.
How long would it take to get every document unredacted that has been redacted? How long would that take? Somebody's collected it. Somebody must have it. Somebody in this room might even have it. Well, how long would that take?
I do not know.
Okay.
What I said, just to comply with that one request, the third item in the committee's subpoena request on the law enforcement documents would take us 3 months of the effort that I described to provide that one item.
Mr. Ashe, previous to getting elected to Congress, I spent nearly 10 years as an energy regulator in North Dakota. I oversaw 1,500 megawatts of new wind development in a state that is the second leading producer of oil. The very famous migratory bird case in North Dakota is very familiar to me. And we want to talk about diverting agents from important international crime rings, and we talk about responding to a request for information as a gross diversion from that very important work of finding international criminals. Your agents scoured western North Dakota to find 7 dead ducks and then brought charges through the Justice Department against 3 oil companies, only to be thrown out, thank God, by a common sense federal judge in North Dakota who, quite frankly, raised a very important point about the definition and the interpretation of what a taking is. What is your understanding of what a take is given this new ruling that, to my knowledge, has not been challenged?
Again, I'm not an attorney. What I can tell you is our belief is that we have one district court, Congressman. We have dozens of prosecutions that have been upheld in the United States courts about the take of migratory bird and migratory birds in oil pits. And so we have one district court decision which is anomalous to dozens of other court decisions over the history of implementation of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. It's a strict liability statute, as the chairman said, and if a bird is taken, then it is a violation of the law.
Except that, according to the judge's ruling, taken is not as easily described or as defined as perhaps it once was. And has that been clarified, or are we still dealing with this sort of broad definition of interpretation based on, some single agent's view or perhaps a political view?
As I said, there is one court that has taken that interpretation. Many courts which have seen the Migratory Bird Treaty Act as we believe it is, a law that applies to all take of migratory birds, intentional or unintentional.
Well, one of the things that has frustrated me already today, and a lot of it comes from the opening statement of the ranking member, he references the lack of a single secretary policy along with other things as evidence that somehow our investigation for truth is, quote, mindless, again, to use his language. And that somehow the lack of a policy is, and we've heard this a lot in here, lack of policy is a lack of evidence of the lack of transparency. And I would submit to you the lack of these policies and the lack of the clarity is the evidence of the lack of transparency. And we're just trying to have a much more transparent process. When I was a regulator in North Dakota, if we provided redacted documents to the legislature, they would have been our last day on the job. I yield back. My time is up.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Chair recognizes